The smoke alarm is shrieking, the kitchen sink is overflowing, and your partner is frantically pacing the living room with their hands over their ears. You just stand there. You methodically reach for the heavy-duty towels, turn the water valve, and start making a mental list of who to call first. Why does your heart feel steadier now than it did during dinner? Here's what nobody tells you. That icy composure in the middle of a disaster isn't just a personality trait or a sign that you're naturally brave. Here's what's actually happening. Your nervous system is finally back in its natural habitat. You are a crisis-fluent human being because your childhood required you to manage high-stakes emotions before you could even tie your shoes. Your brain learned that chaos is the only time you're truly safe. You aren't just calm, you are home. Does it feel like you've been waiting for the floor to drop your entire life? To understand why your brain feels most alive when things are falling apart, we have to look at a concept called predictive coding. Researchers at University College London, led by neuroscientist Carl Friston, suggest that your brain isn't just a passive observer of the world, it's a prediction machine. It spends every second trying to anticipate what's coming next to save energy and keep you alive. If you grew up in a house where the weather was unpredictable, maybe a parent with an explosive temper or a sibling with a chronic crisis, your brain built its entire model of the world on the expectation of a storm. When life is actually peaceful, your brain gets a massive error signal. It feels like a captain who has spent 40 years sailing through hurricanes suddenly being told to navigate a perfectly still lake. You don't feel relaxed. You feel nauseous because the stillness doesn't match your internal map. You are constantly scanning for the wave that hasn't hit yet. We also have to talk about the physical high of the crisis, which involves something called the endogenous opioid response. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a leading researcher on how the body stores stress, explains that when we are exposed to chronic, unpredictable stress as children, our brains learn to release internal painkillers, like endorphins, to help us survive the emotional blow. Over time, you can actually become addicted to the rush of your own survival chemicals. When a real emergency happens, and your brain finally releases that hit of clarity and calm you've been subconsciously craving. It's like being a long-distance runner who only feels normal when their lungs are burning and their muscles are screaming. If there's no fire to put out, you feel flat, sluggish, and strangely depressed. You aren't looking for trouble, but you are looking for the only thing that makes your brain produce the chemicals it needs to feel focused. There's also the role of parentification, a term explored deeply by Dr. Gregory Yurkovich. This happens when a child is forced to take on the functional or emotional responsibilities of an adult far too early. If you were the one who had to de-escalate your parents' arguments or make sure the bills were paid because the adults were checked out, you were essentially drafted into a management position without a contract. You learned that your only value in the tribe was your ability to be the fixer. Now, as an adult, being the calm one is your suit of armor. You don't know how to exist without a problem to solve because without a crisis, you don't have a job description. You feel like a ghost in your own life unless someone is crying or something is breaking. Is your competence actually a choice, or is it the only way you know how to be loved? Finally, we have to look at the window of tolerance, a framework developed by Dr. Dan Siegel. That every human has a zone of emotional arousal where they can function effectively without becoming overwhelmed. For most people, that window is centered around peace and quiet. But for you, the window has been shifted upward. Your normal is what other people would consider a state of high alert. When you are in a quiet, supportive environment, you actually drop below your window into a state of hypoarousal, which feels like numbness, boredom, or a crushing sense of emptiness. You might find yourself unconsciously picking a fight with your partner on a perfectly good Saturday just to get back into your window. You need the buzz of the conflict to feel like you're actually in the room. Can you see how your brain might mistake a healthy, quiet afternoon for a slow, agonizing death of the self? Notice how this manifests in your adult life when you're looking for a partner or a career. Think about the last time you dated someone who was consistent, reliable, and emotionally available. Did you find yourself thinking they were nice but boring, or that the chemistry just wasn't there? This is why you might find yourself magnetically drawn to people who are inconsistent or enigmatic, people who offer that same familiar jagged rhythm of your childhood. At work, you're likely the hero who pulls the all-nighter to save a failing project, but you struggle to finish basic administrative tasks when things are quiet. You need the gun to your head to feel motivated. Notice how you feel a secret sense of pride when everyone else is panicking and you're the only one with a plan. It's the only time you feel like the world finally makes sense. This pattern is uncomfortably accurate when it comes to your friendships, too. You are the friend everyone calls at 2 a.m. because they know you won't judge them, and you'll know exactly what to do. But when you're the one having a hard time, you don't call anyone. You don't know how to be vulnerable in the quiet. You only know how to be strong in the noise. Think about the last time you were on a vacation you had been looking forward to for months. Did you spend the first 3 days feeling incredibly anxious or even getting physically sick? That was your nervous system going into withdrawal from its daily dose of cortisol. You were literally detoxing from the stress that you usually use as fuel. You've become so used to the weight of the world that you don't know how to stand up straight without it. This childhood blueprint is still running in your house today. You might notice that you are hypervigilant, constantly checking the emotional temperature of the room. You can tell if your partner is upset by the way they close the dishwasher or the specific rhythm of their footsteps in the hallway. You aren't being observant. You are scanning for the next disaster so you can be ready to be the calm one again. This is why you feel so exhausted even when you haven't done anything all day. Your brain is running a marathon in the background, constantly simulating escapes and solutions for problems that haven't even happened. You are living in a permanent pre-crisis state. But we have to be honest about the cost of being the person who is good in a crisis. While this trait makes you incredibly valuable in an emergency, it can also make you a stranger to your own peace. There's a very thin line between being reliable and being numb. If you only feel like yourself when things are falling apart, you will eventually start to seek out or even create the very chaos you claim to hate. This is where the trait becomes harmful. You might burn out your body, ruin your relationships, and lose your ability to enjoy the simple, quiet beauty of a life well lived. You deserve to be more than just a survival machine. You deserve to be a person who can sit in the sun without waiting for the clouds to roll in. The real shift happens when you realize that your calmness isn't a superpower you have to use for everyone else. It's a signal from your past that you're finally ready to heal. You don't have to wait for the floor to drop to feel like you're allowed to exist. You can start to retrain your nervous system to recognize that boring is actually safe. Think of yourself like a rescue dog that has finally found a loving home. For the first few months, you're going to bark at every shadow, but eventually you'll realize the door's locked and the lights are on. You are safe now. You don't have to keep the towels in your hand forever. One day, you'll be sitting in that quiet kitchen and a glass will break and you might actually jump. You might even cry. And that will be the most beautiful sign of progress in the world. It will mean you've finally stopped being a soldier and started being a human being. What is the one crisis you find yourself constantly trying to fix for other people? Let's talk about our fixer habits in the comments, because once we name the role we're playing, we can finally decide to quit the job. Next, we're going to talk about the gifted kid to burnout pipeline and why your brain treats rest like a moral failure that you have to apologize for